episode 394 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly podcast of many topics. And listeners, you might be surprised to see a couple two-part episodes back to back like this. That's just because of scheduling issues and because it's December and we're doing Game of the Year and year-end stuff and anniversary stuff. And so it's all a little weird right now. But one thing that is not weird is we have three panelists here excited to talk about Dragon Age Origins, a 2009 classic of the PS360 era. But who's joining me today? They are Wes Iliff.
Hey, everybody.
And Aleks Franiczek.
What? Dragon Age Origins? I thought we were playing Dragon Age Oranges for this podcast.
I have been calling it Dragon Age Oranges as a friend, sort of an inside joke with friends, and then just a me saying it all the time thing since I first played this game 12 or 13 years ago. But I am clearly trying to enunciate Origins instead of Oranges, but I am probably going to slip up at some point or another. But Dragon Age Oranges, why not? Is an action RPG from BioWare in 2009. That is a very specific time and place within video games because that was, I would say, like around the middle of the PS Wii 60 era, where the Wii, PS3, and Xbox 360 dominated the console gaming landscape. But also Steam and PCs with online storefronts had been active for several years by then. So PC gaming was thriving in mainstream when it had been much more niche and limited in the, say, 90s to early 2000s. Basically, it was a new age of video game accessibility and prominence, especially since that PS Wii 60 era lasted sort of like 8 years instead of a console cycle's more typical 5 or 6 years. So I think that's a very interesting specific time for video games, but Dragon Age Origins was right in the middle of it as a big budget, high profile RPG when I personally don't think of that time as being a great era of JRPGs, and I'm someone that grew up on a very steady diet of Japanese RPGs through the 16-bit and PlayStation and PS2 eras. I won't go first today. Starting with you, Wes, what's your sort of background with Dragon Age Origins, and what are your thoughts on it within the landscape of video games in the late 2000s?
No, I was really excited when the game was announced, primarily because they had really advertised the console version as something being analogous to like Knights of the Old Republic and how that worked. Even though it's clearly also a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate, that connection to an RPG series that I had adored for years made me really, really excited. And then the origin system just kind of built on top of it. So I played it on day one, and it was probably the most I've ever actually like put thought into role playing in a video game RPG in my life, to this day. And I think that's part of what made it kind of special in its time. It brought the idea of these really dense computer RPGs to console fans in a really accessible way, which made this really broad audience for what is normally kind of a niche type of game. And it really opened up the doors. There are a lot more big, dense console RPGs that are popular with almost anyone, regardless of what platform they're playing on or how hardcore of a gamer they are. And I think Dragon Age Origins has a lot to say about that.
Totally agree. Aleks, same question to you. Like, what's your general personal background with Dragon Age Oranges, and what's your feeling on its place within video games around that time?
So, like you, actually, I didn't really have I was much more of a Japanese RPG person. I was a big console baby growing up. So most of my gameplay experiences were from consoles from this early era. So I actually didn't come around till BioWare stuff until like the early 2010s, when I had like a laptop that could very very poorly run games like KOTOR and Jade Empire, which I tried those games for the first time, and I always wanted to play those games. I always thought like Western RPGs were cool with like the different decisions you could make and how that would shape like the direction of the story. But I never really had much exposure to them because the consoles I did have were never the Xboxes either. So I didn't play those games on console or like Mass Effect on console when they first came out either. So I didn't really have much of a history with Dragon Age, especially until this year, honestly, when I have a Series X now, so I have the whole trilogy on Game Pass, and I just acknowledged Dragon Age as this massive blind spot in my um, knowledge of like the really big RPG canon. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna check all three of these games out just to see what they were like. So I actually played the first couple hours of all three of the Dragon Age games just earlier this year, just to see what they were like. And Origins did stick out to me as probably the most interesting one, and it's the one I put the most time into. And now this podcast was a great opportunity to pick up on that, and I'm excited to play my way through the whole thing.
Excellent. And at the risk of having this run over long, I think I want to talk about my sort of upbringing and relationship with Western RPGs. I maybe talked about that a little bit in our episodes on Mass Effect and KOTOR, which were all in the last 2 years. Generally, when I grew up with PC gaming, and I played a lot of. I didn't really play a lot of RPGs. I played a lot of Civilization and city building games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, and educational games like Carmen San Diego. But other than dalliances with Warcraft and Starcraft and Civ, I didn't do a lot of PC gaming, and mostly was consoles and handhelds. But that sort of changed when I got my university laptop, and I went to college in basically the second half of the 2000s. So and I think I downloaded Steam my maybe my freshman or sophomore year of college. I got into Diablo 1 and 2 in a big way in those days when I wasn't allowed to have it on my family's home computer. I never had my own computer until my college laptop. And again, like Steam was getting huge then, and but I think also around this time, around say Mass Effect time, consoles were getting powerful enough, and UI was getting good enough, and I think that console RPGs and computer RPGs really started to merge. They weren't I mean if you played Baldur's Gate in 1999 or whatever, uh, it was unthinkable to have that thing on a console. Like famously, Diablo 1 was so weird on the PlayStation. One Diablo 1 save took up an entire memory card.
Oh my god.
It needed I think I could my numbers could be off by a little bit, but I think a PS1 memory card had I think it was either 16 or maybe 24 blocks, but Diablo 1 took up an entire one. Um, but also things like extra downloadable content or expansion patches or full expansions were commonplace on PC games as early as the middle 90s, but weren't really a thing at all on consoles. Like I mean, the modem on the PS2 was barely functional. But Mass Effect and Dragon Age, just sort of being part of this merger of sorts, or the singularity of sorts, and these games were 2007 and 2009. Both of them had a lot of DLC, and that's mostly good and exciting DLC. And we'll talk about the Dragon Age and DLC a little bit, but I recommend most of it. So anyway, all this was sort of happening around the same time. I was getting into Western RPGs that were PC locked for the first time in the late 2000s. I tried to play KOTOR and Jade Empire, but for some reason I couldn't. My video card didn't agree with the Steam version of KOTOR. I don't know exactly why, but
Same.
I was able to play Jade Empire just fine in, I don't know, somewhere in the 0809 range. And again, I played a lot of weird loot RPGs like Torchlight and Sacred, and some of which I could recommend, and others I wouldn't. But I played Mass Effect and Dragon Age basically back to back, right around 2010, 2011, and I had a PS3 and not a 360, so it was a little strange. I played Mass Effect 1 on PC, and then 2 and 3 on PS3, and Dragon Age Origins all on PS3. In the Ultimate Edition, which I think, and I got the Ultimate Edition sort of right when it came out. So Dragon Age and all the DLC for $50 or $60, about a year or a year and a half after the original version came out. And I loved it. I was not excited to go back to PS3 load times or anything, so I'm playing Dragon Age Origins on PC this time. I'm doing EA Online with an ancient EA Origins account that I forgot that I had. But I fired up Dragon Age Origins earlier this month. Well, actually, okay. Well, we're recording in November now, but this episode's going to come up is going to be going in December. So I've been playing it off and on the past few weeks, but have been mostly focusing on Bloodborne, which I was racing to finish in time for the podcast last week. But yeah, I love this game. I was obsessed with it for 2 or 3 years. I beat it, I think, 4 times in 3 years in the early 2010s. But I haven't played it in probably since 2014 or so. And I'd have to go back and double check. But I'm starting with a fresh file this time, so I don't have all the classes unlocked for me, or I should say all the specializations unlocked for me. But yeah, this has been such a weird specific nostalgia for me going back to this game, because this is like the couple of years after I finished college but was still living with my parents, and I was going to house parties at my 20 somethings friends' houses and moving into my first place in 2012, the house where I still am now. Like, for some reason, this is just a different kind of nostalgia than going back to my childhood in the 90s or my RPG obsessive era in the 2000s. This is me sort of being more like me playing Dragon Age and games on Steam for the first time in the late 2000s felt like me being a grown-up gamer for the first time. And yeah, I didn't play Dragon Age Origins right at launch, but I did play Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition on their launch weeks, and same thing for Mass Effect 3 in 2012 around the same time. And yeah, an obsession was born. And I because BioWare has not had an easy time of it as late, I'm very weirdly wistful and nostalgic for just this specific era of BioWare from like 2007 to 2014. And Dragon Age Origins was a huge part of it. And again, that went way too long, and I apologize. But Dragon Age Origins is special to me, and this is my fifth time running through it.
Oh, it's funny how for both of us, like BioWare was like our college our college games essentially, because it's the same thing for me. I played through the whole Mass Effect trilogy, uh, exposed myself to like the BioWare games on Steam when I went to college, because that was like I didn't have all my consoles with me, so I just like installed it and started checking it out. And funny enough, I played all of KOTOR and KOTOR 2 in windowed mode, because that was the way I could get my graphics card to actually run the damn things. But worth it.
I had the weirdest error when I tried to play KOTOR like 15 years ago. It was like I could start the game just fine, but whenever I entered battle, I completely lost control of the camera, and I would get stuck in specific menus. It was completely bizarre. I ended up playing it on the Switch a year and a half, 2 years ago, to finally play it for the first time.
Still, honestly, not a bad way to play it. Those
No,
games are
it's not bad at all.
surprisingly tuned for consoles.
Yeah, and again, and KOTOR is a 2003 game, so having a 2017 machine be able to run it was, I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad there wasn't any issues with it, but I'm not really running into any issues right now with Origins. It's again, because this is a game that runs fairly smoothly on PC, and has way less load times and less chunkiness than I remember from the PS3 version many years ago.
Yeah, I'm playing on my Series X, and it's got like a really nice resolution and frame rate boost that it's just like it feels like very perfectly optimized, and I'm having a good time running it well and having like zero load times.
Wes, how are you running this thing?
I'm also running on Series X, which had all my DLC still saved from when I played this the first time back on 360, which is really nice. So I got to go and dig in and maybe bought a little bit more DLC. Um, I was a sucker.
That's some long-term continuity, though. That's cool.
I can't believe it carried me through that long.
I'm not exactly sure how the DLC works for my Origin slash EA Online version of this game, because I don't have the Blood Dragon armor, but I have all of the other DLC. But also the way that both on the PC and console versions, the way you unlock certain things is things will carry over to the Dragon Age Origins main game if you complete achievements or trophies in the DLC. So like if you get the oh boy, the achievement for finding all of the clothing pieces in Leliana's song, then you get the Battle Dress of the Provocateur armor unlocked in Origins, which I'm considering doing because that's like one of the best rogue armors, and I really could use it right now. Um, but similarly with classes, there are 12 specializations in this game. There's three classes: warrior, rogue, and mage, and each one has four specializations that give you extra skills. That you normally have to unlock them in the game, but in future playthroughs, if you have the achievement for unlocking the specialization, it comes automatically unlocked for you for in the future. So for some things like blood mage, where you can only unlock it as a mage, or things that are there that are contingent on um, much later parts of the game, like I don't think you can unlock champion until you complete Redcliffe. For future playthroughs, everything that you've unlocked in the past will be unlockable again. So that's really handy and makes it a little bit harder to go back with in a, when my I have this game almost platinumed on the PS3, but here I have to basically start cold with not even the Blood Dragon armor that you normally get for free at the beginning. Wes, you mentioned the origin system when you were introducing yourself a little bit.
Yes, I did.
And that is something that is not necessarily unique to Dragon Age, but something that they really ride with as being one of the sort of signature parts of the game. And of course, we all know this, but I explain things as we discuss in case a listener is coming in for education and not for and not for nostalgia necessarily. There are 6 origin stories in Dragon Age Origins that you pick one at the beginning, and that serves as your first hour or two of gameplay before the proper story sets up. And that origin introduces some characters and concepts, gives you your background, is somewhat determining of your starting race and class, and basically is just sort of the chapter 1 of the game. So the 6 origins are Circle Mage, Human Noble, City Elf, Dalish Elf, Dwarf Commoner, and Dwarf Noble. Wes, what was your origin? And give us the abridged version of how it starts out.
So I started with the Circle Mage origin, which is the only way to be a mage, and I wanted to try it for the first time here. Essentially, you get introduced to the circle system, wherein mages are kind of second-class citizens, um, semi-imprisoned while they are trained, and very much watched like hawks by the Templars, who watch them for any kind of acting out, because mages are very powerful and very dangerous as a result of that. And you are essentially caught in between um, a friend doing something uh, not quite above board, and trying to help, trying to turn them in, trying to decide how you're going to handle being on the outside of what's right and proper as a circle mage. Um,
We would talk more about the Templars and the mages very soon, but
yes.
but yeah, I did the Circle Mage origin when I first played the game because I wanted to be a mage right away. Mages are crazy powerful in Dragon Age Origins. We'll get into your specialization a little bit later. Aleks, for this playthrough, what was your origin that you chose, and how did it go for you?
So I did the Dwarf Noble origin, and have been very, very pleased with it. I know it's like literally in the name of the game, but like the origin stories to start the game off, like Chef's Kiss, like what a cool idea, what a good way to situate yourself like in the world and like really establish your kind of role playing identity for like a Western RPG. I can't think of another Western RPG that made me feel like so immersed in my specific character role as this one. And I've heard the Dwarf Noble origin is arguably like one of the best ones, if not the best. So I'm not sure if this carries to all of them, but I can imagine it might. But yeah, the Dwarf Noble origin basically throws you into the backstabby, cutthroat politics of the dwarf world. You're essentially the middle child in a dwarf like dynasty, royal dynasty. You have an older brother and a younger brother. The older brother comes off as like very arrogant, and he's kind of next in line for the throne, and is very kind of show off about it. There really isn't much like kind of cuddly family dynamics here. It's all pretty cutthroat and like kind of cold and detached, but kind of like plays to like just the strength of these characters at the same time. One of the coolest moments of the Dwarf Noble story was going to like there's a tournament essentially being held like in your honor, because you're like although you're the middle child, you're still like held up as like this great champion. So you can go attend this tournament being held in your honor, and you can actually decide to not just watch the tournament but actually participate in it, even though that's kind of like going against like the protocol. But I saw that decision, I'm like, hell yeah, of course I'm gonna do that. That's really awesome. So I participated in the tournament, I won it, and it really just added a lot to how I saw my character, how I started like seeing my character as someone who just values strength and battle above everything else. So that kind of made me think that, okay, maybe my dwarf noble isn't as into the political side of things. He just wants to fight the Darkspawn and be a great champion. And a lot of other kind of like backstabbing happens. It turns out your younger brother actually ends up betraying you, even though you're kind of led to believe that your older brother is out to get you. And your older brother actually ends up getting murdered by your younger brother and framing you for it. And so you're cast off into the Dwarven tunnels, where all they've been like battling the Darkspawn for centuries, essentially. And that's where you run into the Grey Wardens, and I just my dwarf noble Duran Idukin is very just proud to be a Grey Warden and have like the status of being someone who just wants to kick butt of Darkspawn and be as great of a warrior as possible. So I'm having a really good time with the game, and a big part of it is due to how well the origin story was portrayed.
Oh boy, Alex, you threw out some words there like Darkspawn and Grey Warden that we'll definitely get to very soon. I should mention I played all six origins years and years ago, and I was super deep into Dragon Age. And my two favorites are Dwarf Noble and City Elf. So like I was excited to hear that you were made that one your main playthrough. But also you can choose your character's appearance, gender, and class for any of those origins other than Circle Mage, where you're locked into being a mage. Um, uh, you mentioned your dwarf noble's a male. What class did you go with?
I went warrior. I'm just going sword and shield, big tanky dwarf guy, which feels appropriate for my character, and it's been a lot of fun. Just like taunting, taking hits, and shield bashing my enemies down. Has a really nice crunchy sound to it
Yeah,
too. Love it.
taunt. Was it taunt, threaten, shield bash, pommel
Hmm.
strike? Yeah,
It's
all
all you
that
need.
jazz.
Yeah.
And Wes, I mean, we know that you're locked into the mage job, but are you a guy or a lady? And did the and did you go with human or elf?
Lady and human, because most of my main playthroughs of like every Dragon Age game I can do so as an elf. I have a soft spot for the elves in the Dragon Age universe, so I figured, why not try something different for once? I had also done all of the origins when the game first came out. After beating the game, I had to see all the rest of them.
Oh yeah, I had the same attitude. My very first playthrough was a human circle mage, but I ended up doing all the ones after that, and then eventually did a full rogue playthrough as a city elf, a second circle mage playthrough, and then a final playthrough as a dwarf noble warrior. That was maybe my favorite one of them all. So yeah,
City Elf Rogue was actually my first playthrough.
nice.
Yeah, we'll almost certainly go back just to check out those other origin stories because it left such a positive impression on me.
Yeah, I mean, each one of them is basically just like a 90-minute short introduction, with the common thread being Duncan recruiting you as a Grey Warden at the end. And we'll talk about the Grey Wardens soon, I promise. But I want to talk a little bit about elves and dwarves here, because BioWare wasn't their first game necessarily, but I think they first rose to prominence in making the Baldur's Gate RPGs in the late '90s, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. And Baldur's Gate is set in the Forgotten Realms world of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons has many different planes or settings that they take part in, but Forgotten Realms is one of the most popular ones, and that's where Baldur's Gate takes place. And BioWare developed Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 as well as Neverwinter Nights, and I think they sort of became known as sort of masters of the fantasy computer RPG. And then they made an even bigger splash with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic in 2003, which was originally an Xbox game, an OG Xbox, and then had a PC version like a short time afterward. So BioWare sort of made a transition from making PC RPGs to console focused RPGs. Jade Empire was like KOTOR, even though it was an original setting that resembled medieval China and had sort of Chinese, like what's the word, wuxia fantasy as its as sort of its motif. That was also an Xbox first game. And then we know that Mass Effect and Dragon Age were huge on the 360 and eventually the PS3 as well. But all this is just to say that BioWare stopped making D&D and Star Wars games, not because of lack of interest, but because just they wanted more freedom or more money with those licenses, and ended up losing said licenses. KOTOR 2 was not developed by BioWare. That was made by Obsidian, the Fallout New Vegas and the Outer Worlds guys. Sort of almost as a replacement for the D&D and Star Wars license, BioWare put a lot of time and effort into their own sci-fi world in Mass Effect and their own fantasy world in Dragon Age. So Dragon Age is almost BioWare's like mostly original take on traditional Western fantasy, which goes back to D&D and then Tolkien and then like Norse myth before that. But elf and dwarf and human societies interact in a really unusual way in Dragon Age. Elves are not the sort of enlightened, taller than humans, sort of like high magic, full of lore species. They're sort of downtrodden. Elves were a dominant species in the Dragon Age world centuries earlier, but their gods have retreated or disappeared. They're second class citizens in human cities, and there's colonies of them living in forests trying to make it on their own, called Dalish elves. And dwarves used to be possibly even bigger than the elves, but they live mostly in underground cities called Tigers. And we'll talk about Orzammar, the big Tig in Dragon Age, probably in part 2 of this podcast. But they have both a caste system where your profession is set at your birth, but also a hyper meritocracy that encourages competition and hard work in a I don't know if it's exactly capitalism or not, but it's a weird caste meritocracy where anyone that is strong or successful enough can end up being made into an elder or someone worthy of like legendary status. Like it's the dwarven society and elven society are in different stages than we're used to them being in for Western fantasy like this. At least from my limited perspective, because I've played, let's say, fewer than 10 sessions of D&D in my entire life. And but yeah, humans are semi-dominant. There's a lot of different warring human nations, but right now they are sort of the leading of those three traditional fantasy races in this point in Dragon Age's timeline. This one takes place in Ferelden, which is fake England. Over to the west is Orlais, aka fake France, and to the north are the Free Marches, aka small kingdoms and fiefdoms in Central Europe, and north of that is the Tevinter Imperium, aka fake Roman Empire. So this is in fake England. I went with a human noble origin this time. I'm playing a rogue, and basically a fun backstabby rogue. I mostly wanted to do it to see Tim Curry murder my dad. Tim Curry he plays Arl Howe, who's a minor antagonist in Dragon Age, who's introduced in the human noble origin. But in every origin in this game, there's a Grey Warden named Duncan who's looking to recruit more Grey Wardens. Grey Wardens are an order that of warriors and mages and scholars that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, dedicated to fighting Darkspawn. And Darkspawn are vaguely undead, vaguely demonic monsters that live mostly underground and come as hordes or scourges every several decades. And there's darkspawn activity, so Duncan's going around recruiting as many promising young people as he can to be the next Grey Wardens, and that includes you, the player character. Duncan visits High Ever, which is where the human nobles family rules as the local lord, which is called a Tairn. And he intends to recruit one of your guardsmen, who's like a young, promising captain of the guard. But your father is betrayed by Tim Curry, Arl Howe, one of his vassals. Your older brother leaves to fight the Darkspawn, and Duncan, who intended to recruit this captain of the guard, escapes with you and your mother. Well, no. Well, you're actually both of your parents die. It's my bad. Duncan escapes with you while your mom and the captain of the guard sort of hold off the Arl's men. And so Duncan intended to recruit this other guy, but ends up recruiting you instead. But no matter what your origin choice is, you end up following Duncan to the front lines at Ostagar, which is sort of where chapter 2 of the game takes place. You meet the King of Ferelden, who is a bit of a himbo, King Kalen. What were your thoughts on King Kalen when you first meet him in the game? Do you think he's a buffoon or well-meaning, or I don't know?
He's like a golden retriever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. My dwarf definitely wasn't too impressed by him. He was a little too full of pageantry for my liking.
Yeah, he really believes in every bit of heroic fantasy out there, and it makes it pretty much any origin you play makes it very clear that this is not the kind of world you live in.
Mm.
So you're able to pretty quickly tell that this guy is in over his head, even though he thinks he's not.
I feel like in this game where blood is exploding around you all the time and the blood splatter remains on you, even during cutscenes after battles, King Kalen showing up in spotless golden armor, talking about being a hero, just like the Darkspawn Wars and Legends. Like he comes across as well-meaning and maybe even relatively smart and strong. Like I don't think he's a complete moron, but he's like a golden retriever. He's completely naive and here for a good time, which is not what Dragon Age is here. Like most characters in Dragon Age are not here for a good time.
Yeah, it's like the game is using him as a narrative device to show you, oh, this is a dark fantasy world, where this guy is not it.
Yeah, and basically they underestimate the Darkspawn badly at Ostagar. You meet several characters, you learn a little bit about Templars and mages and elves and dwarves just by talking to people around. You get to do some missions out in a wilderness area called the Kokari Wilds. You heal a poisoned dog that eventually joins your party as a steadfast companion, unless you do the human noble origin, in which case the dog is your dog just from the kennels in the castle, and he follows you to Ostagar. Basically, it's an introductory chapter. You meet two other Grey Warden recruits named Davith and Jory, and after you do some questing around and you meet a witch named Flemeth and her daughter Morrigan. You meet Duncan's Grey Warden Kohai, I guess you could say, Alistair, and basically you officially become a Grey Warden when you drink a concoction that includes Darkspawn blood. And again, Darkspawn are basically orcs, goblins, ogres, like demon spawn of sorts, led by a giant evil dragon called an archdemon. But the joining ritual kills Davith, and then when Jory decides to quit and not do the origin, Duncan just murders him in cold blood right in front of you. Uh, giving you just again communicating how dark this dark fantasy is. But the joining ritual is successful with you, and you officially become a Grey Warden. And but the Ostagar siege goes so badly. They underestimated the size of the Darkspawn, and Terran Loghain, who was the second in command of the armies after King Kalen and commanded a large portion of the force on his own, decides to abandon the Kalen's army instead of support him in fighting the Darkspawn. So and Duncan dies on the front line protecting King Kalen. So you and Alistair get out of there. You meet up with Morrigan, Flemeth's daughter again, and you come up with the idea. Wait a second, we have these ancient Grey Warden pacts from centuries ago that the mages of the magic circle, the Dalish Elvish tribes, the dwarves and the dwarves of Ozamar are pledged to help us if the darkspawn threat arises. And Alistair, who is maybe the illegitimate son of a of the Earl of Redcliffe, a very wealthy, powerful nobleman in the southwestern part of Ferelden. He says, "Hey, what if we go to my? Why don't we go to the Earl of Redcliffe and get a human army from there?" So after Ostagar, it's you, your dog, Alistair, and Morrigan. Um, Trying to recruit as many forces as you can from these different corners of Ferelden to fight the threat of the Darkspawn. And you start out in a small town called Lothering, but after that, you basically can do those mid-game quests in any order that you want. And if that sounds a little bit like the recruitment arc in Mass Effect 2, or the different beacons to activate in Knights of the Old Republic, that is kind of the BioWare formula of this era. A dramatic opening set piece, then options and side quests and some self-determined order in the middle parts of the game, with some scripted sections, of course, and then a big dramatic finale. And that is maybe being a little bit too non-specific in describing the BioWare formula, but I think it's accurate. So starting with you, Aleks, this Ostagar portion of the game, maybe going into the early open-ended section, what was one or two scenes that jumped out to you, and how did you feel about this part of the game?
I mean, I just want to say like that battle at the against the Darkspawn, like that must have been so cool at the time of its release, because that the way that battle is shot, that cutscene, just feels like ripping straight from Lord of the Rings Two Towers, with just like the way that like they show like the archers all shooting and the Darkspawn charging in, and it's a very cool cutscene. But it's just like, yeah, that these developers know exactly what they're doing, just playing into the still existing hype from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But yeah, that was definitely a cool moment. I love the dog too. I've been debating whether to make the dog a main party member. I also just kept his name as Dog because I think it serves its purpose. Even though he's a little ugly dude, gotta love him.
Oh yeah, he looks like sort of a monstrous massive mastiff or pit bull with just a giant chest. He actually counts as a warrior class and can learn some warrior skills, but he doesn't. But I think dog isn't very useful in the late game because he can't equip a specialization. He doesn't really equip much armor or weapons. But dog is surprisingly survivable and strong in the early parts of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely not a practical choice, and I probably won't continue to use them just for that reason. But I would like to do a playthrough maybe one day of just me and Dog just going through the whole game.
I think the most popular non-canon name for dog is from a Penny Arcade comic of around the time, where they named him Barkspawn,
Oh,
and
nice.
so
Very good.
I think Barkspawn is sort of the community fan favorite name for dog, although dog does not have a canon name.
Yeah, he'll always be Dog in my heart, but Barkspawn's good. But yeah, aside from just that setup and like the battle and how it leads into the really jarring twist with like drinking the blood and seeing that murder happen, that was all like a great tone setter for the game. But aside from that, just like the being introduced to Alistair and Morgan, like these are two of the best BioWare characters from this era, as far as I can tell. I know that's kind of like their reputation as well, but there's no way these two are leaving my party because they are just so well voice acted, so cleverly written. And yeah, I love them both, even though it's hard to appease both of them at the same time because morally they're quite different.
I want to talk about the moral system briefly. This is not a binary morality system like KOTOR or Jade Empire or Mass Effect, which basically have a blue is good, red is bad
Mm.
system. Dragon Age does not have any morality meter at all, but each individual one of your companions has their own opinion meter about you, except for Dog, whose opinion meter is at 100 permanently.
As
That
it should.
that's not a joke. That's just the truth. But like reacting differently in different situations will have pluses or minus occur to whoever's with you at the time. So and you can manipulate that. Like there's a bunch of items that you can buy to just feed people reputation points, and they'll love you anyway. But also it's also not a bad idea. It's like if you're planning on supporting Mage's freedom, then you bring along Morrigan and maybe don't bring along Alistair. But if you want to support like Chantry stuff, and then you maybe want to bring along Liliana and Alistair and don't bring along Morrigan or Sten, like that situations like that where there's individualist systems, but not a total a binary morality system. But Wes, these early chapters say origin to Ostagar to Lothering. What are some scenes that stood out to you, or a memory that you that took away very vividly?
One of them has to be the wannabe Grey Wardens that join you in Ostagar when you go out into the wilds. Simply because it's one of the first illustrations that, hey, this is a lethal story. Not everyone's going to make it through alive, and it really raises the stakes by giving you these characters for a little bit and kind of sort of getting to know them a little bit before they fail to become Grey Wardens in pretty spectacular fashion. Um, I also love Alistair a whole lot just because he could very easily be another Karth, which I mean in a derogatory term. Sorry, Karth fans.
There should be no Karth fans.
I've seen.
Do you mean Karth, the cowboy rebel from KOTOR?
Yes.
Whatever. Karth just goes pew pew pew. Karth's fine.
Yeah,
But Alistair has an
fine
actual
is a good way to
personality.
put it.
True, yeah. I mean, he doesn't exactly stand out in a game that has freaking HK-47 in it.
Exactly. He's one of those, why would I take him when I have? But Alistair never falls into that trap, which is an easy trap to fall into for, like, you have this character that's going to be with you the whole time. They're going to be kind of your main point of contact in a lot of ways. We got to make them inoffensive as possible. Alistair actually has personality, which I absolutely adore. But what really got me the first time I played this was going to Lothering and doing all those quests and trying to save people, trying to help people, doing all kinds of work to try to improve the lives of these people, and then leaving and realizing, oh, I can't go back. Why can't I go back? Oh no, Lothering did not have a good time after I left.
Yeah, after you finish one of the sort of four main middle game quests, after you finish one, Lothering is wiped out by the Darkspawn, and you can't go back to it.
And you can spend a decent amount of time in their side questing.
You
And you
can.
meet a number of important party members there too.
Yeah, you meet Sten, who's a Qunari warrior who was captured and left to be out for bait for the Darkspawn, but you're able to free him and he'll join you. Qunari are a group of people from the tropical equator of the world of Dragon Age. They resemble minotaurs a little bit. They're very tall and they and horned. Their culture is really unique, and a lot of the conversations with Sten are introductions to Qunari culture. Um, there's a big Qunari sort of portion of the main quest in Dragon Age 2, and you get a very memorable Qunari party member in Dragon Age 3. I don't think they let you be a Qunari until Dragon Age 3 though.
Correct.
You have to be it's only human, elf, or dwarf in Oranges and human only in 2. Which is
Yeah.
disappointing because the Qunari are so cool. I wanted to be a Qunari like from the moment I learned about them.
It's kind of interesting how Sten doesn't have any horns due to, various technical limitations,
Yeah,
last I read, but
yeah, I think they intended them to have horns from the beginning,
yes, they did.
but because of those technical limitations, they was like, oh no, Sten is an exiled Qunari warrior that had his horns broken.
They came up with something, and eventually it kind of fed into the lore of the Qunari, kind of adopting foundlings as well, um, which is its own thing that's not really part of Dragon Age 1 Origins, so maybe I won't go too deep into that.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Bull's mercenary company in Dragon Age Inquisition does not have a ton of Qunari in it because of how unique Qunari culture is and how unique Iron Bull is. But yes, Sten is sort of your starting two-hand warrior if Alistair is your sword and shield warrior. Um, you also get a rogue straight away in Lothering in Leliana, the bard. She's sort of equally good with bows and knives, but she starts with a bunch of bow talents, so they sort of nudge you into giving her bows. But she's a from Orlais, and so when she was a trained sort of handmaiden for a long time, she sort of knows the nobility and aristocracy and knows a lot of stories, but also in the world of Dragon Age, bards are spies. So she's technically an Orlesian ex-spy living in Ferelden. So she's interesting, and because she loves myths and legends at camp, she can just tell you a bunch of myths and legends off of the dome, which is another sort of fun way to introduce the player to the world of Dragon Age. And um I hate to get, weird and gross right away, but Wes, Alistair, Morrigan, Leliana, and Zevran, your elf assassin who joins later in the game. Has BioWare ever had a better set of romance options? I'm not sure.
I swear, Zevran made me realize I was bisexual. I will never not love this group of romanceable characters.
I love all four of them so much. I am a straight male, and I kind of want to marry Alistair.
Yes.
Just anyway. And I just remembered basically playing a straight male mage 12 years ago and being genuinely torn about whether I should marry Morrigan or Leliana because I loved them both so much. But then I accidentally said something to offend Morrigan, so I ended up going Leliana anyway.
It's very easy to accidentally offend Morrigan, I find.
Yes.
Yes. Morrigan's awesome, and Claudia Black had an amazing 2009 because she's also the best character in Uncharted 2. But or was that 2011? Whatever, it's not important. But awesome performances, awesome dialogue, extremely lovable main cast, and Dog is a very good boy.
Gotta pet him every time I'm in camp.
Have you seen the conversation that Sten and Dog have together?
Yes.
Yes.
They growl and bark at each other for a few times, and then Sten goes, "You are a noble warrior,
Yeah.
and worthy of respect." And Dog's like, "Happy bark."
I can't say that I've learned much at all about Qunari culture yet because I can't get through to Sten.
No, Sten is
He is rough.
He is rough. I think it's interesting that he's so hyper focused on the mission and paying what he feels like is a debt that that he comes across as very standoffish and almost like unusually single minded. But also, his gift items for getting on his good side are paintings. He loves nature. He loves nature and art, and he has a sort of respect for nature and art that you could unfavorably compare to a white person's interpretation of native culture, but also just makes him just he has a sensitive soul in there. It's just kind of hard to reach. Unlike Ogren, who's all of his gift items are alcohol, so you know exactly what Ogren's all about. And then Zevran, who's usually the last character that you meet, other than the secret character that I don't want to spoil for Aleks in case you don't know what I'm talking about. Do you know who the secret last character is?
No idea.
Good. Okay. Wes, don't say anything.
I say nothing.
Zevran's usually the last character that you meet because I think you need to meet him in Denerim, which is the capital city, after you've done at least one of the Grey Warden quests. I think I could be off on that, but he attempts to kill you. You decide to recruit him instead. He's a very sassy, very very flirtatious elven assassin. He's great, but he's probably my least favorite of the four romance options, just because I like Alistair, Morrigan, and Liliana so much.
As easy as it is to accidentally offend Morgan, it's that easy to accidentally date Zevran.
Yep. Oh, he's the Anders of this game. You mean, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he is very open. I think he's absolutely fantastic, but everyone else does get a little bit more time and depth and stuff like that. Just because you have to find Zevran a little bit later.
Very well, but also very annoyingly. I hope you'll get where I'm coming from. This was definitely the era of party chat, where depending who was in your party, there would be side conversations taking place while you were doing other things, and so this is some excellent dialogue. Like having Morrigan tease Alistair is incredible every time, and and Ogren trying to hit on even Win is hilarious. Which is weird because part of Ogren's storyline is him trying to reconnect with his ex-wife. But like there's a lot of really cool optional dialogue that comes up semi-organically. And this is, I think, this is not the first game to do it or even the 10th game to do it, but this felt like, you know, a moment of good dialogue in console games that there wasn't a lot like it before. But the other thing that I have a bit more of a problem with is this is definitely the era of a little too much lore. I swear you cannot pick up a lore scroll without tripping over two other lore scrolls. There is so much world building and story development that they did into Dragon Age, and so much of it is hidden in just documents in menus or books that you pick up off the ground. Again, this is right in between Elder Scrolls Oblivion and Elder Scrolls Skyrim, but like I feel like that there's almost too much expository dialogue sometimes, and there's even more hidden lore in all of the books and scrolls and menus that you delve in this game. Like, do you feel like that this game has slightly too much reading, or am I just too jaded and have too many podcast games to schedule?
No, it's absolutely playing off of the two like extremely successful Bethesda titles just coming out in the years prior with Oblivion and Fallout 3. So I think they were very consciously trying to lean into it. They're like, oh, people like reading books in the middle of their playthrough. Let's throw in lots of books. And I'm sure they were BioWare, like this is like they were using the D&D property for so long that I'm sure they were very proud of this world that they built through just like their own originality. So I'm sure they just want to show off with it as well. But with that said, I can't say I've been reading a ton of those documents. Aside from the ones, I actually did have a really good time reading more about like kind of Dwarven culture and Dwarven history, just in that beginning origin section. But after that, haven't been doing too much secondary reading.
But yeah, I feel like this is just a game that has amazing world building and backstory, but they just give a little bit too much of it. It's I don't know, like Wes, I always want to play games that feel like they're part of a huge world and story, but I don't necessarily need to know every detail of that huge world and story.
Yeah, I end up not reading a lot of the extra stuff, just like I don't in real life read every book about every topic. I just read the stuff that interests me. And I think it's kind of unnecessary in Dragon Age. Dragon Age has this big, dense, lore-filled world, and it unveils a lot of it through actual gameplay and conversation. Um, so much so that the books almost feel unnecessary, and the extra lore entries and the codexes and all that.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. It's like this is an amazing world with amazing lore, but there's a little bit too much actual text of the lore that I think they could have done without. But I feel like this is just that era. Like, I mean, I know this game wasn't one of the first to have side dialogue while you're walking around, but this is like that era of playing BioShock and finding audio diaries littered everywhere,
Mhm.
or unlocking so many lore entries that there are dozens of menus to navigate to find them. It just feels emblematic of an RPG, especially a Western developed RPG of that time. But let's see. I don't think we have enough time to talk about every single one of those mid-game quests. And again, the four main ones are Redcliffe, the Dalish Camp, the Circle Tower, and Orzammar. And Orzammar and Redcliffe sort of spin off into larger sort of second half quests. But I think all three of us have done Circle Tower already, so let's talk about that one a little bit. The Circle Tower, where you try to go recruit mages to your cause to battle the Darkspawn, really is the harsher introduction into the plight of mages and the role of Templars in Dragon Age, because mages magic is super powerful, but mages access their magic powers by going into a sort of dream dimension called the Fade, and there's a lot of power that they draw from the Fade, but also the demons of the Fade try to possess humans of the real world to manifest themselves in the real world. So real demons and possession and some such are all connected to this world called the Fade. And because of an ancient legend of Tevinter mages, again, Tevinter was an empire in power centuries earlier. Um, Tevinter mages like creating the corruption and darkspawn in Chantry lore. Chantry is the church system of this world. Uh, Basically, the church keeps an extremely tight leash on mages, both for the so they don't hurt themselves or those around them, but also so they don't defile the will of the Maker, which is the god worshipped by the Chantry, and also because in Chantry in the Chantry texts, mages were a force of evil, and Templars are special knights that are treated with lyrium, which is a stone with magical properties, to give them magic resistance, and they're basically sort of the police and jailers that of the mages. And there's a lot of, do you side with the Templars and be harsh to mages, or do you side with mages and lean towards more freedom and more power and but also more risk? And again, Alistair is a former Templar, so he's definitely on the side of the Templars. Morrigan is a witch who's been living as a free mage, unregulated by Templars her whole life, so she's sort of anti-Templar. Wynne is who joins your party in the Circle Towers quests, is a mage that grew up in the circle, so she is a supporter of the Chantry, but also wants her mage brethren to be protected and saved rather than wiped out if there's a hint of demon activity. Again, if you're in a conversation with like Cullen, the tortured Templar, or Gregoire, the leader of the Templars, be careful what you say around Morrigan or Alistair, because if you go against their beliefs a lot, you'll lose points with them, and if you get too negative with a party member, they can just straight up leave. And in fact, there's a sort of religious toned quest later in the game called the Urn of Sacred Ashes. I'm not sure if you're there yet, Aleks. Uh, but
No.
but yeah, no. If you choose a sort of a blasphemous route in Urn of Sacred Ashes with Alistair, Wynne, or Leliana in your party, because they're sort of the three most pro Chantry people, they can even turn against you in that mission.
Interesting.
So just but again, that's only if you make the most blasphemous choice. But
Well, I'm still just gonna have Alistair and Morgan in my party all the time and see what happens. There's already been like so many conflicts between them where I've upset one or the other. But honestly, it's been part of the joy of this playthrough.
Yeah.
Especially in the early on uh, in the Circle Tower, when you first meet Wynne and the other Circle mages, Morgan essentially like prompts you to attack them. And I initially just followed that whim just to see what happened, and I didn't think it would just lead to a mandatory battle where I killed Wynne and all the mages. And I ended up loading that because Wynn's like one of the major characters, and I wanted to see what happens with her. But I was surprised that Morgan's essentially like, let's kill these weak ass mages.
yeah, I mean, Morgan is a force of chaos a little bit, and you can get into situations where you fight, um, and even kill your party members if you disagree with them, or if your reputation with them is very low. And also several of the main characters, not all of them, have a dedicated side quest, and if you complete or not or fail to complete that side quest, will affect how they treat you at the very end of the game. So in general, making friends is a good idea, but you can't always have it both ways. Basically, I'm not saying you'll necessarily want to do this, Alex, but if you want to go a very blasphemous route in the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest, don't bring Alistair Wynn or Liliana in your group.
Bad things will happen.
Should I invite the evil into my playthrough? Let's see what happens. Stay
Hey, no,
tuned
just
for part 2.
no, just bring around Morrigan, Ogren, and Zevran, and you'll be fine.
So you're saying that it's not like a bad in an interesting kind of way. It's just kind of bad in a bad way.
It's very interesting, but I also am a people pleaser, and I don't want Liliana and Alistair, my beautiful golden retrievers, to leave my party.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. We'll see what happens then.
But anyway, the Circle Tower, you end up fighting a bunch of abominations, and demons and possessed Templars. There was an attempted mage coup that the Templars are trying to contain, and you can choose to either wipe out all the mages, and after which the Templars will lend you forces for the final battle, or save the mages, convince the leader of the Templars that the mages can still, are not a danger to themselves or others anymore, and then you'll have mages join you for the final battle against the Darkspawn. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, just than the simple A or B choice. But the maybe the most notorious part of this quest is a sort of a puzzle centric dungeon called the Fade, or just, well, I mean, the Fade is the concept of sort of the dream world, the ultimate dimension in Dragon Age. But in Dragon Age Origins, the Fade refers to a puzzle dungeon in the middle of the Circle Tower quest. And oh boy, it's a zoo and a maze and sort of interesting, but also tedious unless you sort of already have a good grasp of what to do. But Alex, if this was your first time going through the Fade quests, how did it treat you?
It was a little confusing. I did enjoy the fact that they were trying to do something interesting, mechanics wise, with the circle tower, not just to make it kind of just like a gauntlet of battles or anything like that. So on that angle, I did appreciate the puzzles. Did struggle a little bit, can't lie, but I cut through it, and I'm glad they went for it. I'm not sure if it was beautifully designed or anything like that, but it was interesting at least.
You don't pick up loot in the Fade, but there are about 20 permanent stat boosts that are, and a full stat point boost is fairly impactful in Dragon Age, where your high end stats are unlikely to cross 50. I just find the Fade so tedious, because if you want to find everything, you have to do a fair amount of backtracking, because you have to find the 4 transformations. Golems can break down doors. The Burning Man can walk through fire. The spirit form can go through ethereal doors, and then the mouse can go through mouse holes. But like backtracking to, oh, where was that sealed door, and where was that burning wall that in that other part of the dungeon, it's sort of tedious and hard to understand until you sort of unlock all 4 abilities. But it's not very intuitive where to proceed in that quest. So
No, there's no doubt it's tedious. Yeah.
It's not exactly a prime Metroidvania kind
Yeah.
of.
it's a little going around in circles, but it's not bad, and it is sort of clever. What's your feeling on those Fade, the Fade dungeon within a dungeon, Wes?
I thought it was pretty neat in some elements, especially playing through as a mage. There's some different dialogue that's pretty interesting, but I've played through the game a number of times, and it just kind of gets more tedious each time. And even the first time, it was just like Aleks. I had trouble figuring out exactly what to do at times, and just kind of having to go back and forth and back and forth. And okay, I found this. Where was that last thing that I needed to unlock with this transformation? And lore wise, I think it's really interesting. Gameplay wise, it could have used some editing.
I totally agree, and also sort of infamously, there is a patch developed by fans to just skip the fade, where you'll be trapped you'll be trapped within the fade, and then it'll do a cutscene of you waking up from the dream, and it'll give you all 20 stat points and an appropriate amount of experience points for having done it. That's it. I thought about doing that, but I've decided to replay it just to just so this playthrough remained honest.
The
And I
authentic experience,
yeah,
yeah.
and I could speak about it with a recent memory and not a vague hateful memory from 12 years ago.
A new hateful sorry.
Yeah, exactly. A concrete hateful memory from 20 minutes ago. But again, I think it's more interesting in concept than execution, and just
Yeah.
my own RPG fastidiousness of wanting to find every treasure chest made it worse on myself. But whatever, the fade's over. Now I can actually have fun in Orzammar, because the Dwarven Kingdom is where it's at. Aleks,
Oh,
It
I
really
can't
is.
wait to go back
oh
and get some
boy.
sweet revenge.
Oh, but do you want sweet revenge?
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I guess we'll see. Let's see what Balin has to say for himself.
We will learn all about Prince Balin and Lord Harrowmont next week. We'll also learn about the Dalish elves versus the forest werewolves conflict. We'll talk about Redcliffe and the Urn of Sacred Ashes. We'll get to know. We'll see if Aleks can figure out who the secret character is before they join your party. We didn't even mention Shale the Golem. We'll save that for next week as well. There's so much to enjoy in Dragon Age Oranges, which I'm aware I've been mostly saying the citrus way and not the EA way. It really did captivate me when I played it for the first time, and it was one of my sort of obsessions when in my mid 20s playing Western RPGs. But
I also just want to like shout out like the
oh,
dialogue system just in comparison to like a lot of the other like even BioWare games that preceded it, but also just like Western RPGs of kind of like the mid to late 2000s in general. And like you said, Sollosi, like a big part of it is to do with like the replacement of like a binary moral system with like kind of the more character driven morality systems, and that has such a positive effect on the different dialogue choices you get, how they can encourage different sorts of role playing of your character without needing to kind of like pander to whatever moral path you've essentially chosen that you're going to do for the playthrough. And I've like Western RPGs in the 2010s have done a much better job of kind of having like nuanced, natural feeling dialogue. And I didn't realize this was like seemed to be a significant starting point for getting there and getting away from like kind of the first dialogue option being like, oh yes, I will do the thing because I'm a good person. Second dialogue being, I will do the thing, but I want money. And then the third dialogue being like, I'll do it, but also kill you or something like that. Like it's so improved, and yeah, I've had like a much better time just having conversations in this game than a lot of the other RPGs of its time.
yeah, they give you a lot of options, and they aren't, and every option isn't necessarily married to a tone like Paragon Renegade in Mass Effect, or even
Yeah,
the purple sassy option that pops up sometimes in Dragon Age 2. Uh, be careful with those sassy options though, because you can actually accidentally fall into a romance when you don't necessarily want one.
sass your way into romance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wes, avoiding spoilers so we can get a more genuine reaction from Aleks next week. But what's something that you're looking forward to talking about in the next episode? As someone that I know has played this game about as much as I have.
There are two real big ones. One is just Orzammar in general. Y'all are talking about how good Orzammar is and how good the Dwarf Origin is, and it's all absolutely right. There's
It's
nothing else
my.
to it.
Oh, I can't wait.
If I had to pick a favorite location and favorite part of this game, it's Orzammar. It
Yes,
is. It's just straight up is.
but I'm also looking forward to the climax because there's just a lot that happens there, and I haven't finished every playthrough I've ever started, so that's the spot where I get the most like fresh perspective with having a new character.
I'm going to try and dance around spoilers a little bit, but there's a bunch of ways that the end game can be set up. A lot of things that can
Yes.
happen. There's one option I have never done before, and I'm gonna try and do that this time.
I look forward to talking about it next episode.
Wes, I think you might have an idea of what I'm saying.
I've got 2 ideas as to what it could be.
You know what? I bet one of them is correct. We'll message after this recording. But Aleks, there's a lot of ways the end game can go, and it's going to be a really fascinating discussion when the 3 of us all get to it next week.
I'm nodding in obliviousness right now.
Yeah, no. You're nodding in acknowledgement and some curiosity. I get it. But listeners, we are going to have plenty more Dragon Age Origins talk next week. We're going to talk about the other mid-game quests, the end game stuff. We'll finally talk about Shale, and who was a DLC character originally, one of the maybe BioWare's first DLC character, because I don't think there was DLC character DLC in Mass Effect 1. And again, like and also things like Dragon Age Awakening had us ask the questions like, how much is it okay to pay for console DLC? But those are discussions we'll have next week, along with Endgame and some character specific stuff. We'll talk more about Denerim. There's a lot. Dragon Age Origins is a many splendored thing, and we're gonna have to save a lot of it for part 2 of this podcast. But also coming later this month, we're doing an episode on Lunar the Silver Star. We did Lunar episodes in 2018, but this time, in celebration of RPG Fan's 25th anniversary and Lunar the Silver Star's 30th anniversary, all taking place this year, we're having multiple reviews of Lunar go up in later this month, and they're going to be for all the different versions of Lunar. So I think someone's playing the Sega CD version, someone's playing the PSP version, someone's playing the probably most popular PS1 version, and we're gonna also have alongside those reviews a podcast episode all about Lunar, and that's happening in I think in 2 weeks. But also in December we are doing a year-end episode that Retro Encounter has done every year since 2015, and we've already started planning out January. Big episode 400 is going to be in the middle of January, and we've started planning that out. It's going to be real weird, and I'm not sure it's going to work, but we're going to try. We have that's still in the planning stages. We're going to do an episode about the Super Mario RPG remake, because we did Super Mario RPG episodes many years ago. I don't even remember when. One of my favorite Super Nintendo RPGs, and I have the remake ready to go in my Switch, but I'm not going to start playing it until I finish Dragon Age Origins. So that'll be a motivating factor for me to podcast about that game next year. But also, we have picked the January game for Retro Encounter. We are doing that anarchic Japanese indie classic Moon Remix RPG adventure in January. That is a somewhat unhinged PlayStation 1 game that plays with the very conventions and tones of what an RPG is and is supposed to do. That was a sort of an almost legendary game to Western audiences, that this thing's never going to get localized, until it did get localized in 2020. So the game is available to a worldwide audience in English for the first time, a couple years ago for the first time, and we're finally doing some podcast episodes on it next year. But fortunately, next year is only in about a month. So please look forward to more Dragon Age Oranges, some Lunar the Silver Star, some Super Mario RPG, some Moon Remix RPG Adventure, some 2023 year in review, and some episode 400, all coming in the next 7 weeks. But if you have any questions about the next 7 weeks of podcast, or Dragon Age Oranges, or how many times I said oranges instead of origins, you can always email us, retro@rpgfan.com, or find RPG Fan on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, YouTube, Twitch, Threads, probably more places I'm forgetting. RPG Fan also has a store which is rpgfan.com/shop, where you can buy apparel, coffee mugs, accessories, all emblazoned with the RPG Fan Emerald Shield and 25th anniversary logos. The RPG Fan also has 2 other fine podcasts: Random Encounter about randomness and current games every 2 weeks, and also Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. Please review Retro Encounter and those other podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify or whoever you like to listen to podcasts on. But if you want to listen to us as people and not just as podcast panelists, let's tell the audience how they can find us individually, starting with you, Aleks.
You can just email me at alexfranicek@gmail.com.
Now, Wes.
You can find me on Twitter at Wes Iliff, or on Blue Sky at Lone Weasel, and then whatever else they add for usernames on Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's .bsky.social.
I will never
is-
remember that, even if I do
yeah.
remember that, like out of some kind of moral imperative here.
Yeah, whenever I see Beast Guy, I just think Bisky, and that'll probably get people to spell it wrong, but whatever. I know there is one thing I know how to spell, and that is Twitter, which does not include any letter in the alphabet after W. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Real Monsoon, or on Instagram or Blue Sky at Evoker for Dogs. And also on RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike. So we've done our origin, but we have yet to get to a conclusion, and I cannot wait to reach that. Aleks is our warrior, I'm our rogue, Wes is our mage, and you listeners are our support. Thank you, good night, and good luck.